for the next talk. To start right now, I'll read off the description. It's entitled World Building. It is by Igor Simic. Demagog Studios created 3 games with 3 different game-playing mechanics in the same world: Golf Club, Wasteland, Highwater, and The Cub. In his talk, Simic will explain why his company took this approach to making a constellation of interconnected stories. And I'll read off Simic's bio real quick as well, too. Igor Simic graduated from Columbia University in New York with a double major in film studies and philosophies. His short films were screened in film festivals and in contemporary art contexts. In the art world, Simic has exhibited in New York, Berlin, Linz, Florence, and Belgrade. He is represented by Golink R. Becker in Frankfurt. Igor is the CEO and creative director of Demagog Studios, which makes award-winning games such as Golf Club, Wasteland, Highwater, and which is currently available on Netflix and the PC console this summer. The Cub comes out this fall. Please welcome Igor, everybody, okay?
Do you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for this intro. So I normally do these talks for like an hour and over, and now I have 20 minutes, so I'll have to kind of run through this. I realized that this world-building approach, where you create a world and then you pick and choose stories and even media, whether you'll make a game or a short film or a radio show, that I got the courage to use this approach when I saw the new Blade Runner Denis Villeneuve announced 3 short films that are up on YouTube, and I thought that the animated film made in the Blade Runner world is, in my opinion, even better than the feature length. So this kind of opened up this worldview where I can say, okay, I'll set up the world and then we'll figure out what exactly we want to make in it. And I realized I can also be, because I'm not a gamer, I barely know how to use the computer, I realized that the entry point into our fictional world can be anything. So I never played Overwatch, but I saw the shorts up on YouTube, which means that I, as a gaming dilettante, have an entry point into the world of Overwatch through short film. These are all of the characters in One Piece. And I learned about One Piece because our audio director, Shane, who lives in Tokyo and was a DJ there for over a decade, he used to say that I'm Luffy. So I started reading to figure out who Luffy is and what that means. And I realized that there probably isn't anyone in this room who can't identify with at least one character in this universe, which means there's thousands of entry points into the universe of One Piece. Now, I come from a contemporary art scene, and for me, this meant an approach where you use a kind of montage way of thinking, where you can juxtapose different media, different ideas, different contexts. And this is an example of Camille Henroche. She is a famous French contemporary artist, and this is probably one of the best videos in this century. And it's a desktop film, and it has this encyclopedic vibe about it because it mixes all these different topics. So for me, world building is basically creating a vibe into which a visitor enters. And the world building works if the oxygen of the world you created is nourishing enough that people want to come back, that somehow through osmosis it spreads out between people and they want to spend time in your world. And this is a work for Documenta and Kassel by Pierre Huyghe. And it's basically, so the most interesting art at this stage in contemporary art is happening not in art spaces but outside of them. So when he was invited to Documenta, he said, I don't want to be in the main venue, give me some random corner. And he created this kind of post-apocalyptic world with his performing artist, this Ibizaner dog called Human. And he placed the sculpture, and there's a beehive on the head of the sculpture. It's some special type of bee that won't stink visitors. And it becomes a living ecosystem that evolves as Documenta, for the duration of Documenta. Now, Olafur Eliasson was invited to the Tate Modern, and what he has done in the Turbine Hall is created a sun. And the glow of the sun, the temperature changes depending on the behavior of visitors, which means that he created a kind of bubble, an ecosystem that responds to visitors. In other words, all of this is past the stage where you just have a painting on the wall, but you're creating really a kind of mini world building. And yours truly, a German artist, Anne Imhoff, she is famous for creating these spaces where you just feel very uncomfortable and where there's this vibe of angst. And the performers are contemporary dancers, but also drones. And that is not very different from creating a similar space within Fortnite when Travis Scott had his concert. And the interesting thing about Fortnite, there's a couple of companies in Serbia, such as Trilateral. You probably heard about MetaHuman. That is their software. They scanned Keanu Reeves for The Matrix. They were bought up by Epic Studios, and they use Fortnite Creative to teach kids how to build games. And within Fortnite, this is one of the reasons why Zuckerberg gave up on the metaverse, and at least on the last board meeting, he didn't even mention, even though all of COVID, he used to talk about it. So Fortnite is a metaverse, basically, and there are islands within it that have completely different aesthetics and completely different vibes. So this is another Berlin magazine, Null and then 32C. And this is kind of, because I'm a nerd, but not really a computer nerd, more a book nerd, I need a kind of textual theory to justify what I'm doing. And I found it in this magazine. And the thesis is, the cover was The Big Flat Now. In other words, we're living in a time of bigness, which means that everything is overwhelming and giant, and a lot of things are happening, and not any single person can really wrap their heads around it. Everything is flat, which means on your iPhone, everything is assigned kind of almost subliminally the same value because they get the same real estate on your phone. That means that Stephen Hawking, Da Vinci, Kim Kardashian, anything that comes up in your feed has the exact same value in some way. And everything is now, which means everything is happening simultaneously, and you can just go, you don't have to spend your time listening to my boring talk, you can go and play some games. So simultaneously, you have many different options. This was the approach our company took. Now, I wasn't really aware I was doing that. Unity invited me to give a talk in Los Angeles about Transmedia. I asked them, what is Transmedia? Then I Googled it, and I said, oh, I'm already doing this, I'll give a talk. But I don't like the definition of Transmedia. This dude, Henry Jenkins, teaches it at NYU, and it's, in my opinion, basically a way for Star Wars to make toys, this approach. This is more kind of my view of things. It's partially inspired by a very controversial German philosopher, Peter Sloterdijk. And it's this idea of creating bubbles. In my opinion, the role of the creators is to create worlds, in other words, bubbles or vibes that people want to inhabit. And there are two main approaches, a hard and a soft one. A hard one is kind of Lord of the Rings, where everything is very precisely defined. The lore, the language, everything. It's a very kind of minutia-oriented geek approach. And the other one is soft world building. And the soft approach, like in Star Wars, allows for a lot of improvising and for easy expansion. In other words, the stormtrooper way in the background can be the main character of the next sequel. And Lord of the Rings doesn't really allow for that. That is great for milking money, which is why Bob Iger acquired Lucasfilms, but it's also a good way to focus on emotional storytelling, which is what our role model kind of for the company, Hayao Miyazaki, does. Kiki's Delivery Service is my favorite Miyazaki film. And he never explains, oh, why Kiki can fly and what does this mean. You take it at face value. Why? Because you believe the story. The focus is on her emotional arc, not on all of the kind of nerdiness of the world building. So these are just a very broad strokes kind of division between soft and hard world building. And you have a pretty cool video on YouTube that goes into that. So for Golf Club Wasteland, our approach began with these kind of different views on Earth, whether Earth is our planet, whether Earth is just a bus stop on our way to cosmic colonizing, and a kind of a Samuel Beckett, Elon Musk duel. That was kind of what triggered me. And this contradiction is exemplified in this Florida photo. This is actual documentary photography. They're golfing while there's a forest fire raging in the background. So what I came up with, friends of mine had day jobs. I had to come up with an idea that we can develop after their workday in the evening hours. So I thought golf is simple. The rich people like to play golf. And I realized, because at that time, Trump, it became clear that he will be the Republican nominee. And also Musk at that time became this celebrity entrepreneur. So I realized for Trump, people who own farmland in Scotland that can be turned into a golf course are just a nuisance for him. And for Musk, Earth is kind of a nuisance. So from their vantage point, the best scenario is that we all die so that they have free real estate on Earth. So that's what I pitched to Apple. That's it. So they featured this on the cover. I think one reason is it looks cute enough to kind of pass muster. On the other hand, it's a kind of inside joke because all of these Silicon Valley people are their friends. So in creating the world building, the main thing for us was this premise. The premise is kind of what makes the bubble grow. And then you fill up the world. So the architecture, we went for something I know, which is Yugoslav brutalism. Everyone gets inspired in sci-fi by Hong Kong, by Singapore, by Tokyo. Not only have I never been there, but it's already kind of overused. So I thought, I never saw Yugoslavia as a sci-fi setting. Why wouldn't we do that? Because I grew up in the projects of Belgrade. So we use that as a starting point. It also has an ideological basis because it's modernist architecture. What is modernism? Basically, technology will bring progress to everyone. Well, we saw how that is going, so it's kind of funny to show modernist architecture in a state of ruins, just as you would see ancient Greece or Rome today. Then on top of that, we put neons. They're millennial pink because I'm millennial. That's also kind of like this, Pepto-Bismol pink. And we can then include a lot of kind of contemporary memes. And it's a diorama, which means it's a side scroller. One, it's simpler to make because we finished the whole production in around about 8 months. And you can do the storytelling in depth by putting all of these ideas I talk about simply in the background. So in short, the MoMA in New York had an exhibition about Yugoslav architecture plus neons plus memes. So Trump wanted to tweet press coverage. He tweeted press kofefe, which means that kofefe becomes a neon in our game. And the big monument is an anti-fascist monument. In other words, it's ideological. Kofefe is post-ideology. In my opinion, kofefe is almost like Dada. You've heard of the contemporary art movement, Dadaism, so we're living kofefeism. So basically, when I pitched to Apple, I sold, for me, premise, vibe, and world are one and the same. So the Wasteland game has to follow these themes. These are themes I kind of know something about: loneliness, ecology, and all of this blah blah about post-humanism they teach now in philosophy. And the storytelling is very important for us because that's the only real skill I have. So what we've done is we created a story where there's a twist. Our golfer used to be the pilot of the Mars mission. He meets a mutant boy at the end of the game. So that is kind of the main thrust of the golf game. And we even won awards for storytelling, which is pretty amazing for a golf game. And but since I like working with people, I studied film. The excuse I found was the radio program. So we worked with over 10 musicians, and we created Radio Nostalgia from Mars, which is like Sleepless in Seattle with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, but it happens on Mars, and it's for people who miss Earth. In other words, this is a future scenario where we reminisce about the present, about what we already have. In other words, we are creating a kind of alien vantage point, for example, on just this situation. Oh, isn't this amazing? Look at all of these people gathered together. This is beautiful. So in other words, reevaluating what we already have. And the gameplay is basically just golf. So this is the radio program, and this connects to the story about the big flat now, about multiple points of entry into a world. We created 3 music videos using the assets from Unity, and they're up on YouTube, which means that people who are not gamers can appreciate the world, interact with the story through music. And this is just a bit of it.
Take my hand, don't let go. I know we won't get lost. On our way home, take my hand, don't let go. The signs are fake and the maps are false, but we must go on.
So we've done 3 videos like that. For example, this one is interesting in light of the current war. It's an American and Russian astronaut arguing who has the best culture. So the American says Kubrick is the greatest filmmaker. The Russian says, no, it's Tarkovsky. The American says Jack London is the best writer. The Russian says, no, it's Dostoevsky. But in the end, they work on the same space station. But we'll skip that because I don't have time. So basically the flat Transmedia version looks like this of the whole project. However, as I said, I don't like the Transmedia approach, so I read Flights by Olga Tokarczuk. She is a Polish Nobel Prize winning writer, and she used constellation to explain her novel. So I basically just nicked that. And what is very important for us is it has the fictional world, the sci-fi world of the game has to communicate, has to be connected to the real world. So we have a giant neon Ministry of Loneliness with LOL shining. That's lifted from the New York Times because the UK has a section in their government for loneliness, especially for old people, because kids just leave them and no one cares about old people. So that sadness of the way we deal with each other and the alienation, I brought back to the real world from the digital world of the game by building the actual neons. This was Ars Electronica, and this you can see at 68 Projects in Charlottenburg. It's my solo show. It's on view until June 21st. So same, Weltschmerz. You all know, I mean, Germans here know what that means. This is the full circle. We start from the real world references, we put it into our virtual world, and then we bring it back to art spaces, public spaces, and so forth. Now, I had all of my friends expected we'll be millionaires after the golf game. I kind of explained that's not realistic, but that we should continue our trajectory of world building. So we basically pitched a sequel. What happens after the golfer from Golf Club Wasteland meets this mutant kid? So this is just a small taste of it.
Got no time for sorrow. I'm the son of no one, the son of no one.
So basically now this story is from the vantage point of an Earthling mutant. It's debatable whether it's a human or something new. And it's simply inspired by our childhood in Yugoslavia during the war. And again, huge radio program. We have 5 hours of original music and stories with actors all playing in the helmet that this cub will wear in the game because he eats one of the rich people from Mars and takes the helmet and puts it on his head. These are some game references. So we're basically creating a Jungle Book in the future. And we're using 80s and 90s games because that's what we know and what we grew up on. The entry point is always the character, at least for me. Best storytelling in film relies on interesting characters you want to spend time with. Again, the neons. Now it's doom scrolling. The hand that you saw in the previous video is now in the new game, but you actually can run on it. It's not simply something in a 2D background. The hand is this is the hand of Lenin, but his showing the better future, but his index finger is cut off, and it's lifted from a film by a Greek filmmaker, Theo Angelopoulos. This is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade. Beautiful crystal structure, female architect. We lifted that and created a set in our game with this Greek Aphrodite making a selfie. Again, the monument is featured again in the game, and now we're also playing with augmented reality. This is the cub messing with Marcel Duchamp. And Highwater, this is the game that is now on Netflix. This game is a prequel. This is the week before the uber-rich leave for Mars, and you and your friends, I assume there are no billionaires in the audience, are just simple people, and you are using this yellow boat, you all know these boats from the migrant crisis, to get into Alphaville. Alphaville is basically Silicon Valley.
Good morning, Highwater dwellers. Highwater Pirate Radio, keeping you in the know with our flow. Alphaville authorities continue to deny false rumors that Alphaville elites are planning to evacuate to Mars. True or not, the one thing we can't deny is that the world ended on a sunny day.
The world ended on a sunny day. Boys and girls surfing in the bay. Kids clamored in the park. No one suspected the coming dark. The wave was coming, but the sky was clear. I let it wash over me. Swept away, swept away.
2023. So this is another 5 hours, a prequel of music, a prequel radio program. This is before Shane, our radio host, also escaped to Mars. And the workflow for the radio is I write the lyrics because the world has to be cohesive, and then amazing musicians. This is the vocalist from Laibach perform the music. So Alex Platz, Flooded, main character Nikos, and again, all of the same monuments featured in all three games, but in different contexts. Alphaville, fully inspired by Apple HQ, by Norman Foster, and basically this round shape is almost like a medieval moat, and you're trying to get into the center where the Hope rocket, Hope reference to Barack Obama, is leaving Earth, because Hope leaves Earth. And these kiosks, you saw them probably refurbished also here in Berlin as small coffee shops built by a Slovenian architect in former Yugoslavia. We use them as space pods. Metropolis, Fritz Lang, and NASA, and then that results in our kind of Silicon Valley meets NASA world. Turn-based combat in Highwater, it's kind of slapstick, and you use the environment, because the world is the main character, to win the battles against Alphavillians and insurgents. Pigman, a reference to Seinfeld and Kramer seeing a pigman in the hospital, and a bunch of main characters who are all inspired by people we know. The Orthodox priest is the only guy who can throw magic. It works even on atheists. And kids, the mutant kids, kind of foreshadowing the Cub from the third game. So basically what we're creating is this. These bubbles are different media. For now, we've created 3. So these, as far as I'm concerned, these are different world buildings. Here you have Alberto Mielgo from Love, Death, Robots. Tyler, the creator, is his own world building. Everything from the color palette to the sound to the vibe to his cars is one world. Gorillas, the original music kind of world building. Zelda, there's a great text in the New York Times just last week. The title is How Zelda Changed the Game. So our goal is for this world to eventually also become a series and so forth. Arcane is probably the best example of that. So these are our 3 games, and this is my talk. Thanks. I went over time. So.
Yeah, no problem. We have time for one question. Does anybody have, because you have a lot of stuff in yours, and I know people had a lot of questions. I saw the one in the back on the left. Yeah, that one waving right now. Because you have a whole world building aspect, and people are like.
I wanted to ask, how did the world end? It looks like kind of an ecological collapse, but also radiation like waste or like a nuclear war.
So that's why out of the 2 approaches, soft and hard world building, we went for soft. In other words, it's never explained. And the important thing for us is all of these are basically comedies. So if you play them, you'll see there's a real hopeful streak about them.
Thank you so much.
I'll be around, so if anyone has questions...
Give a round of applause, please.
Yeah, feel free.